The phone call came at exactly midnight, sharp and sudden, like the strike of a clock's hands, slicing through the stillness of Sarah's quiet home. She was sprawled on her couch, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the only sound that filled the otherwise silent room. It was late, much later than she had intended to stay awake, but the soft glow of the lamp and the warmth of the blanket she'd draped over her shoulders made it hard to move. She had been trying to sleep, but the creeping thought of her father, who had passed away 2 years ago, lingered in her mind. She hadn't been able to shake it, the way grief sometimes claws at you, even when you try to bury it. When her phone rang, the screen flashed with his name, and for a moment, she froze, her heart doing a strange, painful flip in her chest. She stared at the screen, wide-eyed, unable to comprehend what she was seeing. It couldn't be him. It just couldn't. Her father had died in a car accident, and the last time she had heard his voice was at the funeral, as she whispered goodbye in the quiet church. The call kept ringing, louder, more insistent, until she shook herself from the trance and, trembling, picked it up. "Hello?" she said, her voice shaky and uncertain, unsure if she was dreaming. For a long moment, there was nothing but a low crackling noise on the other end of the line. Then, his voice, his unmistakable, comforting voice, sounded through the receiver, distant but clear. "Sarah, check the locks on the windows." Her stomach tightened. She blinked, the words too strange to process. The voice, warm but somehow distant, urged her again, this time with a subtle sense of urgency. "Sarah, check the locks before it's too late." The call ended abruptly, leaving Sarah with a thick, suffocating silence. She stared at the phone in disbelief, her pulse racing as the words repeated in her mind. Her father had never sounded like that, so soft, yet strained. What did he mean by that? What could possibly be waiting at her windows? She glanced around her living room, the same familiar place she'd spent countless nights alone, but now everything felt alien. She stood up, her body rigid, the air suddenly cold despite the warmth of the house. Something about the way the room was too still, too quiet, made her feel as though she was being watched. The low hum of the refrigerator was too loud now, the ticking of the clock too sharp. Without thinking, she made her way to the first window in the hallway, her hands shaking as she reached for the lock. It was fine, secure as always, but a strange sense of dread crept over her. The house felt suffocating. She quickly moved to the second window, her breath shallow. She had to check, she thought. Her father had warned her, and as foolish as it seemed, she needed to be sure. As she reached for the lock on the second window, a sound interrupted her. Something faint but unmistakable, like a floorboard creaking upstairs. Sarah's breath caught in her throat, her heart beginning to race. It was nothing, she told herself, just the house settling. But the words her father had said kept echoing in her mind, and the unease gnawed at her. She hurried to the final window, her feet almost stumbling in her haste. She needed to get this over with. Her hand trembled as she twisted the lock, her mind screaming at her to stop. But she had to check. She looked out the window and froze. There, just beyond the glass, was a figure, tall, unnaturally still, like a mannequin posed in the dark. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The figure was watching her. Her father had been dead for years. She had seen him laid to rest, the casket lowered into the ground, the mourners walking away, never to look back. This could not be real. Her father couldn't be standing outside her window, but the figure didn't move. It didn't speak. It just stood there, unnervingly still. She stumbled back from the window, her heart pounding, but the image of that shadow lingered in her mind, too vivid to escape. She had to check again. She couldn't trust her eyes. She had to be seeing things. She reached for the door, her body trembling, but as she touched the handle, she heard something else, soft and faint, a voice whispering her name from behind her. She spun around, but there was nothing, just the empty hallway stretching into the darkness, the faint echo of her breathing, too loud in the silence. Then the voice came again, soft but urgent. Sarah, don't look away. It was a warning, but it made no sense. Her legs moved on their own accord, carrying her back to the window. She needed to see it again, to understand what was happening. As she reached the window and looked out, again, the figure had moved closer. It was no longer outside the window. It was inside, her father's face. But something was wrong. His face was distorted, stretched unnaturally, his eyes too wide, his mouth pulled into a grin that was far too wide to be human. It wasn't him. Not anymore. It was something else entirely. Something dark and twisted. The figure stepped closer, its body a grotesque mockery of her father's familiar frame, its movements jerky, like a puppet on broken strings. Sarah, the voice whispered, now warped and guttural, coming from that twisted version of her father. I've been waiting. Sarah backed away, her mind screaming for her to run, but her legs refused to move. The house, once her safe haven, felt like a prison. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick with an unnatural pressure. She turned and ran down the hallway, toward the front door. But before she could reach it, the house shook. The door slammed, shut with a force that rattled the windows. She spun around, her heart in her throat. And there, standing at the other end of the hallway, was the figure again. Her father, or what was left of him. Sarah, it said again, its voice sickeningly familiar, its smile too wide to be human. The air grew colder, and Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps. Her father's warning echoed in her mind, a final, twisted command before it's too late. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the house went dark. Her breath hitched. In the pitch-black darkness, she heard movement, soft and deliberate, footsteps coming closer. She wasn't alone anymore. The walls felt alive with the sound of something watching her, something closing in. The hairs on the back of her neck prickled, and she knew, in that moment, that she was no longer in control. She had ignored the warning, dismissed it as a hallucination. But now it was too late. A whisper brushed her ear, cold and invasive. You shouldn't have looked away. And then the darkness consumed her.